One of the top requests Sonic fans continuously see being shot down by Sega is the want for Hypersonic to return in Sonic games. Everybody for some reason thought he was going to appear in Frontiers, while somehow forgetting that 50 billion times Takashi Iizuka has said no. Got so pissed he straight up said Hypersonic was never canon, period. See, this is why we can't have nice things. I think this is mainly because for the past 15 or so years, we've been met with Supersonic transformation after Supersonic transformation. It became pretty much tradition that ever since Sonic 3 and Knuckles, if you had a Sonic game, it needed to end with a big ol' epic fight where you play as Supersonic taking on whatever big bad had been hyped up throughout the adventure. I think Sega got tired of how repetitive this was getting, and with the 2010 Sonic games rarely having the main antagonist be anyone other than Dr. Eggman, I guess they didn't feel much need to really power Sonic up at all. Colors, Lost World Forces, none of these really seem grand enough to warrant going super. I think that's why everybody was so excited seeing him be used for every boss fight in Frontiers. Not only because playing as him throughout the whole game is much less jarring than being swung into this new control scheme at the last minute, but also because it's Supersonic, he's just cool. A sad result of this, however, is that seeing and playing as Supersonic so much kinda runs your dopamine thin. The final boss doesn't seem as epic when you take him down the same way you would any other. And I think that's why most were shocked to see Sega didn't just give him a new form at the end. Even if just aesthetically, it would make all the difference. Especially with how much they were hyping up his cyber corruption throughout the game. Well, it seems that Sega had the same thought, as we recently got the trailer for Sonic Frontiers' third DLC update, which shows Sonic turning super, and then going one step beyond and channeling his cyber energy into becoming a Supersonic with blue eyes. I really hope this isn't the only design difference. By God, that would be lame. But either way, it got me thinking about that weird rule Sega's had recently, that Sonic can't transform beyond being super. Because even if that were the case, the franchise has had plenty of different Sonic forms he would be able to turn into in the past. All of which I think elevated their respective story beats and became iconic with the series in its own right. So today I figured I'd go through every transformation we've seen Sonic go through in the series. From the Werehog to Dark Sonic to that weird Prime form I now gotta look into. Wait a second, to the Wisps kind of transformations? Well, if so, then we already know who's gonna be at the top of the list. Obviously, we gotta begin this with the main man who started it all. Super Sonic, whose first appearance was of course in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 after collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds. I'm not sure if it's been flat out confirmed anywhere, but it's been widely accepted for decades at this point that Super Sonic is a direct homage to Dragon Ball Z Super Saiyan. But I don't know, Super Sonic is just kinda cooler. Look at that smile. Something worth noting, considering he's the only form here to transcend the classic and modern series, appearing with almost every iteration of the character, are the design differences between all versions. For example, in Sonic 2 he's got the design you'd expect from classic Super Sonic. He's just Sonic with the yellow fur and raised spikes. However, in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, due to a visual glitch I believe, Super Sonic is given green eyes, which is some amazing unintentional foreshadowing if I've ever seen it. With Sonic Adventure though, he was of course given an updated look, which was then further updated again with Heroes. First of all, I like that they gave him red eyes. Makes him look way more intimidating and highlights how powerful his form is. However, in Adventure 1 and 2, his spikes went more out instead of up, if that makes sense. Except for his top one, which stayed in place. But then I think as a way to differentiate his spikes from Shadow, they decided to instead just have all his quills going upwards. It doesn't bother me that much, honestly. I only ever noticed it once it was pointed out to me, so I could go either way. But I do like when they occasionally show his quills move with Sonic's momentum. I wish they did that more. One aspect I can certainly take a side on is the gold versus yellow debate. Summed up, yellow is better in 2D artwork, but gold is better in 3D. It's not a huge deal or anything, but I always loved how shiny he looked in the first 2 adventure games and Heroes. Made him look way more like he's being powered up by a magical force rather than, well, he was peed on. On that note, I remember as a kid it really bothered me in Sonic 06 that his muzzle and arms also had a yellow glow to them, but he looks great either way. It only really stuck out to me because it's like the only time they've tried that. Really, what else can I say? I think everyone can agree that Super Sonic is badass in just about every canon. It even made movie Sonic come off a little bit cooler. I love that it's tied to his maturity in that story. I wish that more games had Super Sonic built into the narrative a bit more, like in Adventure 1, where he absorbs all the positive energy from the emeralds after Chaos channels the negative. How in Adventure 2, with the story putting such an emphasis on Chaos control and Sonic and Shadow being equals, them taking down the final boss in their super forms is like the culmination of all that. Or even in Frontiers, where you spend the entire adventure trying to unlock them from the vaults. Much better compared to something like Sonic Heroes, where you run through the entire game normally, then by the end, Eggman is like,
Ah! If only we had the 7 Chaos Emeralds! What's this? But how?
Like, sir, this is the first time they've been brought up the entire game. You sure are lucky. Either way, Super Sonic has rightfully earned a spot near the top of the list. I'm curious to see if I think anything is going to surpass it. I'm thinking that maybe because we saw him so much in Frontiers, it might have turned on the cool factor a little bit for me from so much exposure, but we'll see. Sorry, editor. I think you put up Super Sonic twice instead of the next entry. You know, it's okay, I'm not mad or anything, just don't let it happen again. Oh, okay, I get it now. Joke's on me. Let's stall the video for a while as a funny prank. I get it, but, you know, for real, let's get on with it. I wrote for this part to go on for like another 2 minutes, but I'm just gonna save us the time and get straight to the point. Super Sonic! Fleetway Edition. Now, generally, I'm trying not to count different iterations of the same super form as separate entries, like classic, modern, and movie Super Sonic are all the same to me, but I'm willing to make an exception this one time because Fleetway Super Sonic is drastically different when compared to what you'd expect from the character. Most notably, he's evil.
Are you a real villain?
Yeah, so in the UK comics, apparently whenever Sonic is exposed to too much chaos energy, it results in him turning into this weird demon, with it eventually splitting off and becoming its own being. Now, I haven't read any of these comics. I actually recently bought like 200 of them, so when I go back home to Ireland, I gotta catch up for sure, but I know that by the time the Sonic Adventure adaptation rolled around, they had Super Sonic get reintegrated back into regular Sonic, but the comics didn't go much further beyond that, I think. It's when they started just repackaging older issues as newer ones. A whole bunch of info. Either way, this is a great idea. Maybe not for Super Sonic, but I wouldn't mind them trying something similar with this in the future with a different form that turns him evil. But he's gonna go under normal Super Sonic for now. I love his red spiraling eyes though. Gonna be honest here, I don't know why there's so much demand for Hyper Sonic to come back. When Sonic 3 gets locked onto Sonic and Knuckles, I guess Sega wanted a different reward for getting all the Chaos Emeralds again, and so it results in this upgraded form of Super Sonic, where he's radiating a flurry of colors all at once and gets way more abilities. For example, not only is he invincible like normal Super Sonic, but also he can breathe underwater, which is apparently something that still affects the former. But you can also perform a double jump, which is extremely useful. And on top of all of that, when performing the double jump, it causes a screen nuke, killing any badnik in your way. I love playing as Hypersonic in 3 and Knuckles, but that's his only appearance. Sega has been very adamant about never wanting to bring him back, even refusing to allow the Mania team to bring him back after the word Hyper was found in the game's files in the special stage results screen. And even Ian Flynn apparently pitched for Hypersonic to appear at the end of Frontiers for the final boss, which, of course, was rejected. I don't know, I like Hypersonic and all, really, I have nothing against it, but it was only a part of this franchise for such a short part of its history so long ago that I don't even really care enough that it hasn't been brought back. I just accept the fan theory that after using it to defeat Dr. Robotnik at the end of 3 and Knuckles, it caused all the Super Emeralds to shatter. I'm more so eager to see them experiment with new forms. Like? So I've never seen Sonic X before, so this was a complete shock to me after seeing it for the first time as a kid. I always thought this came from fan edits and stuff, but no. Apparently in the 3rd season to Sonic X, Sonic has a brief moment where he turns into Dark Sonic.
I'm eager to see if they're powerful enough to defeat you!
Alright then, let's test them out!
So the 3rd season of Sonic X takes place in space or something, and so Sonic breaks into the Meta-Rexes. He's the villain.
Actually, he's not the villain. The Meta-Rex are a clan. The guy you're thinking of is Dark Oak, which isn't even the guy in this episode. Campaign for Mark to review Sonic X.
His BS. He sees a bunch of fake Chaos Emeralds along with an unconscious Chris Thorndike, and instead of thanking the Meta-Rex for this, he starts to channel all that dark energy from the fake emeralds to turn into Dark Sonic, who destroys his 2 robots in a second flat. Oh, that's it. That's his only appearance ever. Dr. Eggman bursts in and basically scoffs at Sonic for letting himself get so angry, which... okay. And so Sonic powers down back to normal. I always liked when Sonic would get really fucking pissed. Not in a baby way like, those rotten, sneaky... No, I mean when he gets fucking angry and is out for blood. Dark Sonic has a cool design, just being a completely black Sonic with no pupils. But if anything, I think his brief cameo is a testament to how cool of a concept he is, considering fans still don't shut up about him to this day. Who knows, maybe if Sonic X got a 4th season they would have went into this a little more, but as of now, Dark Sonic is super cool. Made a great first and, as of now, only impression. Also, I'm not counting Nazo in this list because apparently that was just supposed to be Super Sonic, but they gave him a different design. Continuing this theme of evil versions of Sonic with no pupil and has dark in the name, DarkSpine Sonic. He appears at the end of Secret Rings with Sonic throughout the game having to acquire all 7 of the world rings, but after the genie Shara double-crosses him and wants to give them all to the Eraser Djinn, and then proceeding to get killed by the Eraser Djinn, Sonic goes crazy and accidentally absorbs the power of only 3 world rings, red, purple, and green, which represents the emotions of rage, sadness, and hatred respectively. I wish Secret Rings was a bigger budgeted, longer game, so they could actually show us all the different combinations of what Sonic would look like with certain rings, because DarkSpine Sonic looks freaking cool. His skin is all purple, he loses his gloves and shoes with gold inhibitor rings around his hands and feet, again, has no pupils, and they added this racing stripe which I feel is pretty sharp. It's a weird design, like, really weird, but I think that's why I like it. I can't imagine Sega doing something like this now, which is why I'm really hoping that Cyber Sonic in the Frontiers update has at least somewhat of an interesting design and not just super with blue eyes. He can perform all the moves in the game like Time Break and Speed Break, and you can do this weird mid-air spin to build up your soul gauge. I feel like in a better game, DarkSpine Sonic would have been a really hyped up finale. But as is, I'd probably put him above Hyper Sonic, but under Dark Sonic. The Werehog is without a doubt one of the most controversial additions in Sonic lore. Being initially called Evil Sonic, he was designed to be a lot more beastly in early versions. The story for Unleashed hadn't been finalized at that point, and so the designer tried their hand at a variety of different looks for this new form, with my favorite being this guy covered in cool chins. It's possible he was just unleashed? Thank you. The whole gimmick of this game is that when night comes around, Sonic turns into a werewolf, due to some Dr. Eggman shenanigans. This was constantly mocked and shit on for years in the gaming community, but I'm glad we as a society are finally able to come together and admit that the Werehog is pretty fucking cool from a conceptual standpoint. His design is great, I love the more feral look for Sonic, him being covered in fur, the more pronounced fangs, giant hands with claws, and goddamn cleats. Makes me wish Sega were more willing to give Sonic new forms that weren't just some variation on Super Sonic. Okay, no, the wisps don't count. The Werehog also opens us up to a lot of great moments in Unleash's story, which is definitely one of the best stories out of any game in the series. I love when Amy runs up to him only to not notice who he is, which in any other scenario from around this time would make him overjoyed, but here he gets a little sad. That not even his biggest fangirl is able to recognize him and causes him to worry that maybe he's losing himself a bit, before being later reminded that his outer appearance isn't what makes him Sonic, it's what's on the inside. I love it, I wish we could get that kind of plot out of the Sonic game again. Frontiers was getting there. I'm not that big a fan of Sonic now being presented as some perfect character. I like him influencing and inspiring those around him, but I just wish he wasn't such a goody two-shoes. Give me some of that edge back. And the Werehog has edge and speeds. After Sega started becoming ashamed of their lesser titles, straight up removing them from certain retailers if they have a low Metacritic score, Sonic Unleashed and therefore the Werehog seemed to get locked away in Sonic Team's vault. Considering it came right after 06, people were not kind to the franchise, certain sites even giving Unleashed a lower score than it. It was like some kind of contest to see who could make the most scathing review, and that lasted until around Generations. But as of Sonic Runners in 2015, we saw Sega start to embrace the Werehog again, which was nice to see. And since then, he's continued to appear consistently in mobile games. Fuck, I went in a tangent again. The Werehog's cool, I like the stretchy arms. Notice how so far every one of these Sonic forms are fucking cool? Yeah, no, Excalibur Sonic is no exception. As of now, it's actually unique in that it's the only Sonic transformation to not involve Sonic actually transforming into something. I literally think it's just a magical suit of armor. Excalibur Sonic was yet another that was bashed for a while, along with the entire premise of Sonic and the Black Knight. But as a kid, I thought this was peak gaming. I thought it was badass. Sonic being surrounded by this suit of golden armor, the way the spines shoot out the back, his little red cape, I love it. He doesn't get that much attention in the story, he really just appears for that one brief boss fight and is never seen outside of mobile games like the Werehog, but he makes a strong first impression. The aesthetic of that whole boss fight in general is just peak Sonic in my opinion. I don't have a bunch to say about him because, again, he's only around for like 5 minutes in the entirety of the franchise, but I at least wanted to say I really miss the theme the storybook series was setting up, where every Sonic game would end in a new super form. I know the games weren't the best, but maybe if they brought back the idea on the Switch or something so they'd stop having to downgrade the PS5 and Xbox mainline stuff, I would be down for that. Okay, so I have actually not seen the second season of Sonic Prime yet. I binged it all the first night it came out, and while initially I considered it the best Sonic show, yeah, no, Boom took the crown again in my heart. I watched the first episode of Season 2 when it came out and completely forgot how much of it was just exposition and flashbacks and horrible pacing, and in my opinion, a pretty bad Sonic characterization. I don't really like Sonic when he's running around hugging his friends and telling him how much he loves them. I always liked the Sonic who trusted his friends to know he cared about them without needing to say it. The Sonic who was able to have an attitude towards people other than Eggman. Prime just leans too far into a Sonic that I don't find interesting. So yeah, I don't think Prime is bad or anything, and the animation itself is great. I just don't personally think it's my ideal version of Sonic or his universe. Why is Rouge a part of Team Sonic? Why? So obviously, I can't give the most detailed description of the story since I've only seen half of it, but generally, Sonic broke the multiverse and needs to gather Prism Shards to restore it back before the multiverse is taken over by unfunny Eggman Council, I guess. By the end of Season 2, Sonic gets his first transformation since Black Knight, where he gets to use the power of 4 prisms to turn into Prismatic Sonic, who has this purple highlight to his quills and eyes, with glowing gloves and shoes. He looks alright. I definitely think they're using it to build up to a Sonic that's collected all the Prism Shards. You know, unless this is all the shards. Again, I haven't seen it. Where in that case, alright, look kinda lame. It just kinda makes him faster and stronger. Almost no different to Super Sonic, other than the lack of flight. Also, they'll lean a lot more into the after effects he creates with this, which is a fun idea. Either way, going at the bottom of the list. Not because he's bad, but instead because when your competition is all these guys, you're in for a bad time. So, there we have it. Until Frontier's 3rd update, this is currently all the Sonic transformations out there. So for now, let's rank them. Starting with Super Sonic, Dark Sonic, Super Sonic, Fleetway Edition, the Werehog, Excalibur Sonic, DarkSpine Sonic, Hyper Sonic, and Prismatic Sonic. And, if the wisps count, then, okay, you have everything else there, but under that, Laser, Hover, Spike, Drill, Rocket, Frenzy, Void, Fire, Lightning, Eagle, Ghost, Rock, Stone, I don't know, Asteroid, Cube, Rhythm, and Bomb. Honestly, my main takeaway with this video was, every time Sega lets Sonic transform beyond Super Sonic, it more often than not results in the most hype moments of the entire franchise, so let him do it more.
Sweet rain all through